Aloha! This is Talking with a Good Man. I'm Jay Goodman, and this is the Screwtape Letters Lenten series. We are on letter 12 today, and another amazing commentary by Jim Beckman. What an honor. So we've arrived at a milestone, too. It's the end of the second full week of Lent and the third Friday in this Lenten series. We're like moving right along. I hope and pray your Lent is going well and you're sticking to what you gave up, and I hope you're embracing the Lenten cleanse and the Screwtape Letters, because I'm having fun. This is amazing. It's taught me a lot. It's kind of made me more self-aware, like it talks about, and it's just been a good time being with you and spending time doing this for anybody listening. So, Talking with a Good Man is a show aimed at calling all men to be a good man. Being a good man is very difficult. Believe me, it's hard for me. Daily I work. Sometimes I fail, sometimes a lot. I try to keep pride out of my life. We have to remember we are amazing. We were made for magnanimity, which is greatness. God made us for greatness amidst our failures. When we mess up, when we have the lows and our undulations in life, as C.S. Lewis mentions in the letters, we must remember to not allow shame in, to know that we were made for awesomeness, and to continue living the life and living a repentant life, a constantly repentant life. Join me in striving to be a good man for your family, your church, yourself, and God. Welcome to letter 12. The theme today is the great deception, and the theme verse is from 1 John 1:8, which says, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. This definitely puts all of us in our place. I mean, we all have sin, we all have concupiscence, which is the propensity to sin, that sinful nature we were born with. We inherited it from Adam and Eve and their choice to disobey God. Basically put, even the greatest people out there have sin and deserve hell just as much as the next person. But thanks be to God that He came and died on the cross and rose from the dead to save us from our sins. So now we can be with Him. With that sobering Bible verse, let's read letter 12. My dear Wormwood, obviously you're making excellent progress. My only fear is lest in attempting to hurry the patient, you awaken him to a sense of his real position. For you and I, who see that position as it really is, must never forget how totally different it ought to appear to him. We know that we have introduced a change of direction in his course, which is already carrying him out of his orbit around the enemy. But he must be made to imagine that all the choices which have affected this change of course are trivial and revocable. He must not be allowed to suspect that he is now, however slowly, heading right away from the sun on a line which will carry him into the cold and dark of utmost space. For this reason, I am almost glad to hear that he is still a churchgoer and a communicant. I know there are dangers in this, but anything is better than that he should realize the break he has made with the first months of his Christian life. As long as he retains externally the habits of a Christian, he can still be made to think of himself as one who has adopted a few new friends and amusements, but whose spiritual state is much the same as it was 6 weeks ago. And while he thinks that, we do not have to contend with the explicit repentance of a definite, fully recognized sin, but only with his vague, though uneasy, feeling that he hasn't been doing very well lately. This dim uneasiness needs careful handling. If it gets too strong, it may wake him up and spoil the whole game. On the other hand, if you suppress it entirely, which by the by, the enemy will probably not allow you to do, we lose an element in the situation which can be turned to good account. If such a feeling is allowed to live, but not allowed to become irresistible and flower into real repentance, it has one invaluable tendency. It increases the patient's reluctance to think about the enemy. All humans, at nearly all times, have some such reluctance. But when thinking of him involves facing and intensifying a whole vague cloud of half-conscious guilt, this reluctance is increased tenfold. They hate every idea that suggests him, just as men in financial embarrassment hate the very sight of a passbook. In this state, your patient will not omit, but he will increasingly dislike his religious duties. He will think about them as little as he feels he decently can beforehand, and forget them as soon as possible when they are over. A few weeks ago you had to tempt him to unreality and inattention in his prayers, but now you will find him opening his arms to you and almost begging you to distract his purpose and benumb his heart. He will want his prayers to be unreal, for he will dread nothing so much as effective contact with the enemy. His aim will be to let sleeping worms lie. As this condition becomes more fully established, you will be gradually freed from the tiresome business of providing pleasures as temptations. As the uneasiness and his reluctance to face it cut him off more and more from all real happiness, and as habit renders the pleasures of vanity and excitement and flippancy at once less pleasant and harder to forego, for that is what habit fortunately does to a pleasure, you will find that anything or nothing is sufficient to attract his wandering attention. You will no longer need a good book which he really likes to keep him from his prayers or his work or his sleep. A column of advertisements in yesterday's paper will do. You can make him waste his time not only in conversation he enjoys with people whom he likes, but in conversations with those he cares nothing about on subjects that bore him. You can make him do nothing at all for long periods. You can keep him up late at night, not roistering, but staring at a dead fire in a cold room. All the healthy and outgoing activities which we want him to avoid can be inhibited and nothing given in return, so that at least he may say, as one of my own patients said on his arrival down here, I now see that I spent most of my life in doing neither what I ought nor what I liked. The Christians describe the enemy as one without whom nothing is strong, and nothing is very strong, strong enough to steal away a man's best years, not in sweet sins, but in a dreary flickering of the mind over it knows not what and knows not why, in the gratification of curiosities so feeble that the man is only half aware of them, in drumming of fingers and kicking of heels, in whistling tunes that he does not like, or in the long, dim labyrinth of reveries that have not even lust or ambition to give them a relish, but which, once chance association has started them, the creature is too weak and fuddled to shake off. You will say that these are very small sins, and doubtless, like all young tempters, you are anxious to be able to report spectacular wickedness. But do remember, the only thing that matters is the extent to which you separate the man from the enemy. It does not matter how small the sins are, provided that their cumulative effect is to edge the man away from the light and out into the nothing. Murder is no better than cards, if cards can do the trick. Indeed, the safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape. And that is letter 12. Hey, I'd like to welcome back Jim Beckman. This is Talking with a Good Man, the Screwtape Lenten series. This is letter 12 we're doing. We're in our second full week. We've covered a lot. There's been many days I've had guests and sometimes no guests, and this is absolutely a spiritual cleanse these last few days, these last couple weeks. So yeah, welcome back, Jim.
Great to be back with you guys.
Yeah.
On the journey, we're on letter 12 today, right? I did the right letter.
Yeah, we did.
That'd be bad.
We're on letter 14. What?
Yeah.
Letter 12. We're trucking along. Yeah, I've loved how Screwtape and Wormwood try to build this military front against the patient using other demons like Glubos and Slubgob.
Yeah,
I forget the other one. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, you got to love all the creative names that he has for the different spirits. Well, I think it's just fascinating. You know, more of the same, you could say, with just trying to keep the patient, is what they call in the dark. Like keeping things vague and unclear, and I don't know about you, but like it just makes me think about all of the ways in my life that I experienced this kind of hazy thing in your mind where you're not really aware of the movements in your heart. You're not really aware of all the things that you're thinking. And I think our Western culture really lends even more to it, it almost like disposes us to the attack, because there's just so much entertainment and noise and distractions that are just constantly around us, that the typical person has so little real silence and solitude that are fundamentally necessary for awareness, right? Like most of us are just, we're busy, we're just surrounded by noise all of the time, or looking at our phones, or checking messages, or trying to do all those things. So I just think we're uniquely disposed for this constant haziness and lack of, just lack of, clarity about our real state of things, right?
Yeah.
Which is how he
Hey,
kind
Jim.
of started out the letter, like, uh, you like, above all, don't let him waken up, to the reality of his situation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the letter opens is, you know, uh, be careful not to let the patient actually wake up to what his real situation is. So it's kind of a theme. I think every single time we've talked on these Fridays, there's just been this theme of keeping us in the fog. Like that it's one of the great strategies of the enemy is lack of clarity, lack of awareness, and kind of almost like lulling us into a half asleep state, where we just aren't really aware of what's going on. The application for us is every single one of us can relate to being in a situation where we've fallen into some kind of sin or we've drifted away in some ways, even if it isn't a big thing, like it could just be like we snapped in anger at one of our children, or we reacted poorly with our spouse, or so it doesn't have to be even serious sin, but there's just this, like I think our first posture is a defensive one where we try to justify what we did. Like we wouldn't have reacted the way that we did if the other person hadn't have done what they did, right? um, which is the same activity in uh, early Genesis, right? The whole conversation when God comes into the garden between he and Adam and then he and Eve is blaming. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's just our first response when sin is exposed, right? But then the second thing that we do, first we point blame and take lack of responsibility, but then we hide, right? Like what did Adam and Eve do in the fall? They made loincloths and covered themselves, and then they hid when they heard God in the garden. They hid themselves so he couldn't find them, as if he couldn't find them, right?
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
can't hide from God. Um, so like that's exactly the strategy that you see unfolding in this letter is you see, you know, Wormwood is making progress with his patient, which means he's probably led him into some sin or some distancing himself from God. And then, the first thing is, we'll keep him really unclear about what he's done, so that he doesn't become aware of his real situation. He's going to start feeling, uncomfortable being around the enemy, around God.
Yeah.
And so just keep him in that vague space where he doesn't really think about it too much, like some of those lines that you were reading. And then, like in about the middle of the letter, Screwtape starts saying to him, a few weeks ago, you had to tempt him to an unreality and to inattention in his prayer. But now you will find him opening up his arms to you, almost begging you to distract his purpose and benumb his heart. He will want his prayers to be unreal, for he will dread nothing so much as effective contact with the enemy. So like this is what starts to happen is where like we get kind of caught in this malaise of, we don't feel worthy, we don't feel comfortable, we know something's wrong, but we actually don't want to take the steps that we would need to take to set things right. And again, the enemy is the accuser, so he loves to tempt us into the sin, but then the minute that we fall, he loves to point his finger and say, see what you did.
Yeah.
And then all of that unravels on us in a way that, and then because we feel so bad and disconnected and kind of disintegrated, you could say, we tend to be lured to other things to comfort us in the way that we feel. like I just need to watch a movie, or I just need to eat this, or I just need to go do this. And so we I don't know, we just kind of numb ourselves with even more distraction and more lack of clarity,
Yeah, now we've got these little black boxes. We can binge watch a show from
Yeah,
season 1 to season 27,
right.
and just never stop. And we've kind of used many things to numb ourselves. You're right on. I mean, drugs, movies, TV shows, porn, all those things, alcohol, just to keep ourselves in this numb state.
Well, and it's a way of hiding, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what Adam and Eve did, you know, first blame, then cover, then hide. Like it's just kind of the ongoing strategy of what the enemy does to us, and how much it confuses things.
Yeah.
And like the end of the letter is kind of powerful, because Screwtape kind of comes back and makes it really, really clear, like, look, you don't have to use really serious stuff to get your patient down this path. Like you don't have to tempt him to murder. You don't have to tempt him to go sleep with a prostitute. What does he say? Murder is no better than cards, if cards will do the trick.
Yeah.
The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Like our whole job as the evil spirit is to just lure your patient away from the enemy. You want to get him away from the relationship with him.
Yeah, like slowly. I like the word it uses, the gentle slope. And then in letter 11, he said, uses words like quietly and comfortably towards our Father's house, meaning Satan, meaning hell.
Yeah.
I mean, Satan does come it comes as the angel of light. He comes as a roaring lion, look at me, roar. I'm going to, find you and devour you. But then he also comes, I think, quietly and gently, and keep the dude comfortable, as he goes to hell, on his way to hell.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the really practical things that we can do during the season of Lent, like I love that you're doing this during Lent, because really, what is the Lenten season? When it leads us into these practices of, prayer and penance and almsgiving, like these sacrifices that we make. Like one of the reasons why that can be so powerful for us is because it actually awakens awareness.
Yes.
So the whole thing that our enemy, Satan and his minions, the whole thing that they're trying to do is to lure us into vagueness and unclarity and disconnectedness and disintegration, and away from God. But God actually is completely transparent.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wants us to know his thoughts. He wants us to be aware of his desires. Like he hides nothing from us. And he wants nothing more for us to be in absolute clarity of the truth. Right. So like that's one of the really beautiful things about the pursuit of faith and our relationship with God, is he just lets it all hang out there, sometimes in all of its brutal honesty. And so we should find ourselves taking more and more of a comfort in that kind of illumination, right? So what the season of Lent does for us is, all of a sudden, let's say we decide, okay, I'm going to give up coffee. That may seem like a really, simple thing to do, and maybe it's kind of trivial, but if you really drink coffee a lot, and you wake up every morning and you really, really want a cup of coffee, but you decided, no, I'm giving that up for Lent. Well, all of a sudden you're aware of these strong desires, right? And if you're
Yes.
older like me, I actually haven't, coffee isn't one of the things that I gave up this year, but I have in past years. So it's an example that's, like I'm aware of what it does, but that desire for the coffee is a moment for clarity. It's a moment for awareness, right? So first is just being aware, like, wow, I really want this. I'm going to allow the process to play out in my mind to make it a conscious decision. No, I'm giving that up. I gave that up. And I want to offer that to the Lord, for my own sanctity and for the pursuit of relationship and really out of love, right? Like I want to give up my coffee this morning, Lord, because I love you, right?
Yeah.
But there's a second step that we can kind of lean into where, why do I want this so badly? You know what I'm saying? Like just letting yourself ask the question, which most of the time we never pay attention to, right? What am I really wanting here? Well, I like the comfort. I like the taste. I like the feeling of sitting with a warm cup of coffee, even when I pray in the morning. That's not a bad thing, right? But what do I really desire? I desire to be with the Lord, right? And so Thomas Aquinas has this great way of kind of separating these distinctions. He calls them good, better, best. Like, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good desire, even to want a cup of coffee, right? But there's something better in giving that up for a greater good. And there's something even best, that ultimately what I'm giving up is my desire for those kind of earthly pleasures for the sake of God and for my relationship with him and for that eternal reality. So during this season, I give that up for the intentional purpose of growing in greater depth and greater intimacy in this relationship. So Lord, I want my desire for this cup of coffee to actually be replaced with a deeper and deeper desire for you, right? And I know that just sounds like so much thought, but this is actually where God invites us. And everything that we're doing with this whole book study, what C.S. Lewis is wanting us to become more and more aware of is the subtle attempts of Satan and these spirits that are kind of attached to us to kind of take us away from God. C.S. Lewis is trying to help us be aware of that attack and aware of these subtle attempts to keep us constantly in the dark and constantly vague and unclear about even our own passions and desires and how they sometimes lead us away from God, So it's a beautiful opportunity to lean into all of that is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you kind of summed up all 31 chapters as just awareness that C.S. Lewis throws at us.
Yeah.
I like that. And you can kind of gauge, like in the beginning, it says, I'm jumping into the sentence, but as one who has adopted few new friends and amusements, but whose spiritual state is much the same as it was 6 weeks ago. And that was my inspiration to do this, was where was I at 6 weeks ago? And since then, have I grown? And then I thought, well, Lent is about 6 weeks long, give or take. And thinking, man, why don't I just do that so that people can, and myself especially, because I'm like the chief of sinners in my mind, is at the end of Lent, I look back through Lent and I think, well, did I become more aware of the things I do every day and deal with, and whatever I gave up? Like in this case, for me, it was my time to do this video, which has been very difficult at times, no pun intended, but giving up my time. And then at the end of it, can I look back and say, did I grow over those 6 weeks? Am I different than I was when Lent started? And if you weren't, you got to wait another 365 days to try again. I mean, you can do it any time, but as Catholics, we look forward to Lent and Advent being the smaller Lent. I love that awareness.
Well, I mean, I think the way you'd want to look at it is, like I exercise all year long, but I periodically will have times where I'll do a more intensive, 4 to 6 week, 8 week program, almost like a boot camp, almost like a little boot camp thing where I've gained some weight and I've gotten a little bit lax in the way that I'm exercising or things that I'm doing and you get kind of motivated, like, okay, I need to step it up here. That's what Lent and Advent is for us, right? Like there are these little kind of more intentional times that invite us into, kind of like reestablishing disciplines and getting them more solid and consistent. It doesn't mean that that's the only time of the year that we pay attention to these things. Like that should be stuff that we're doing all year. But
Yes.
Lent and Advent are these great opportunities, to kind of do an intensive rekindling of the fire.
So, yeah, thank you for doing this again.
Absolutely. Yeah, great being with you.
Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jim, for doing this for us every Friday. If you want to get a hold of me, my email, as always, is jgoodman.deepadventure@gmail.com. If you want to donate to all of this and what it can be down the road, my Venmo is at jgoodman75, at JAYGoodman75. Check out bearschoolofmanliness.com. There's so much content on there. There's so much to help you grow as a man and grow closer to God and to be that strong man, for your family and your church. There's also a section for all you mama bears out there and to support and strengthen and encourage each other. Now about the drawing again, remember, on April 13th, the day before the last letter, letter 31, so the day before that, I'm going to go through all the comments, and if there's at least 100 comments in total throughout all of my videos, then I will put all of those names into my long ride home hat, and I'm going to physically draw a name out in front of you and pick somebody. So, but again, there has to be 100 comments for me to do the drawing. And the winner is going to receive a long ride home hat, the Clive Staples Lewis Complete Signature Classics, exactly like the one I use in the show, and a copy of Marlon De La Torre's study guide. I'll send all that to you. I'll see you all tomorrow. I hope your Lent is going well. I hope you're learning a lot as we go through this Lenten cleanse together. I know I'm personally learning a ton. Pray for me. I'll pray for all of you, and I look forward to tomorrow.